Welcome back, class. We continue to talk about what makes up Hinduism. We haven't quite gotten to Hinduism, but we're talking about the influence from the Aryan people group and Indus Valley people, and we're going to continue on with that, and we're getting closer to what makes up Hinduism with epic religion. You know what an epic is, right? In the West, we have the Iliad and the Odyssey and the Aeneid. Those are epic stories about the Greeks. So Hinduism, I'll just call it Hinduism, has epic stories as well. And the epic stories are in the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. I know these are different words, so you can practice it. The Mahabharata and the Ramayana. Now, I have to tell you another thing we've mentioned before, and that is the distinction between Shruti, things that are heard, spoken and then heard. The universe is speaking, like the Vedas are Shruti, and Smrti are things that are remembered. It doesn't have the status of scripture. So this now in epic religion is Smrti, S-M-I-R-T-I. And let's see, you're wondering, what's she going to ask on the test? I don't know yet. I'll tell you when we get there. I'm just going to tell you stories right now. So these are stories that we get some religious teachings from. A lot, actually. But think about the epics in the West, the Iliad and the Odyssey, Homeric epics. It's got the gods and it's got humans, and there are heroes, there are virtues of the heroes. There's some of that in the Mahabharata, but it's more. So this is 18 books long. It's huge. I was at one of my professor's house, and she had the volumes on her bookcase in her house, and it was like that big, the books that make up this epic story. And it's a story about two families primarily and who should rule. So I'm going to tell you about the story of the Kauravas, K-A-U-R-A-V-A-S, the Kauravas, that's a family, and the Pandavas, and they are related to each other. The Pandavas is P-A-N-D-A-V-A-S. The Pandavas are 5 brothers. They are princes. One of them is named Arjuna, A-R-J-U-N-A. And these 5 brothers are married to one lady named Draupadi, D-R-A-U-P-A-D-I, Draupadi. All right, so you have the Kauravas and the Pandavas. The Pandavas are 5 brothers married to Draupadi, and they're related to each other. Now, what happens is the Pandavas are gamblers, and the Kauravas know that. The Pandavas are ruling in a certain area. They're princes. They have power. And the Kauravas know that they have a gambling problem, a weakness, and so they make a bet. The Kauravas say, play us this game of dice, and we will put your wife up as, the prize. If we win, we get Draupadi. And so the Pandavas lose, and Draupadi goes to the Kauravas. But Draupadi is a devoted wife, a good wife, and protected by the gods. So she has a sari on, and the Kauravas are trying to take her sari off, her clothes off, and the gods make it impossible. So they keep pulling and pulling, and it never ends. So they give up after a while. Draupadi is protected by the gods. But they come back to the Pandavas, and they want to now gamble for the land that they own. So the Pandavas fall for it. They lose their land to the Kauravas, but the Kauravas say, we'll give it back to you in like 12 or 13 years. Come back, and we'll give it back to you. So the Pandavas go into exile for this period of time, and they were going to come back and rule. And there's stories. I mean, the Mahabharata is a story of what happens to them while they're out, for these 12 to 13 years on an adventure. And they meet gods in the woods, and it's an adventure story. But they do come back, and they want the land back, and the Kauravas won't give the kingdom back to them. and they have to go to war. Now, the story I'm going to tell you is at the center of the Mahabharata. It's a story within a story, and it's called the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of the Lord. And I'm going to show you the handout that goes with this. So Appendix 1, selections from the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita means Song of the Lord, and it's Lord Krishna. Now we're going to start seeing some of the gods that are familiar within Hinduism. Arjuna is a Pandava. He asks his chariot driver to drive him through the middle of this battle between the Kauravas on the one side and the Pandavas on the other side. These are friends and family members and cousins and teachers and uncles. They're going to go to war with each other. And Arjuna has a moral crisis over this. He thinks, you're not supposed to kill your family. You're not supposed to go to war with family. And he doesn't want to go to war. Now, the chariot driver is Lord Krishna, an avatar of the god Vishnu. I should probably tell you the main gods. Do they come up? They come up down here. Vishnu is the preserver god. Shiva is the destroyer god. And there's a god named Brahma, who's the creator god. What you need to know right now is Krishna, who's Arjuna's chariot driver, is the god Vishnu, come down to restore order to a situation that has gotten out of order. And part of that being out of order is that the rulers, the Kshatriyas, aren't doing their job. Okay. Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu. He's the preserver, and he's going to preserve the order of the universe. The Kshatriyas are not doing their duty, and so Krishna is going to teach them a lesson through this war to restore order. Okay, now, Krishna is going to try to convince Arjuna that it's his duty to go to battle. You are a Kshatriya, a warrior. Warriors go to war. You need to go to war. There's this overriding duty to be consistent with your class than to be consistent with not killing family members. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna lays out some arguments for Arjuna to convince him to go to war, and I'm going to tell you some of those arguments. This looks like a good quiz question. What are the arguments that Krishna gives to Arjuna that are meant to persuade him to go to war? What are Krishna's arguments to Arjuna? All right, the first argument, number 1, nobody ever really dies. Why? The soul goes on. So we're going to start getting some religious teachings here. Nobody ever really dies. The soul goes on after the body dies. That's his first argument. The second argument, the self never dies though the body dies. Okay, so now we're getting this concept of the self again. The self never dies though the body dies. That's his second argument. Third argument, everybody will die if they're born. Everybody will die if they're born. Fourth argument, do your duty. This is your duty to go to war. Fifth argument, if you do your duty, then you die, then you go to heaven. And now we get this idea that heaven is a place that's good, and you go there when you do good things. That's the fifth argument, heaven, because you've done your duty. The sixth argument is shame if you don't do your duty. So let's say you don't go to war, you live, and you're a warrior, you didn't go to war, then you live with shame for not going to war, for not doing your duty. That's the sixth argument. The seventh argument is a win-win situation. If you die, then you go to heaven. If you go to war and you don't die, then you're going to be victorious in battle. And those are both good things. So if you engage in battle, then you'll be victorious. If you engage in battle and you die, then you go to heaven. I guess he's not giving him the option that if you go to battle, you could lose and not die. But this is a god talking to him and giving him encouragement to go to battle. Now, Arjuna doesn't seem to be satisfied with this. After all these arguments, he seems to want to say that there's a law above this law. But that's the philosophical speculation that's part of Hinduism. What is the highest law that's beyond these laws, this order of society in the world? Is there a higher order? They don't always answer those questions. Now, another core question coming from this reading is, what are Krishna's teachings about yoga? Have you taken yoga? Do you know what yoga is? Yoga is rooted in this Bhagavad Gita. Yoga is meditation for the purpose of liberation from the cycle of birth, death, rebirth, reincarnation. So now we're getting this idea not only of the soul goes on forever, but there's a reincarnation of the soul. And the reincarnation of the soul itself may need a kind of liberation. It may be a drudgery, birth, death, rebirth, birth, death, rebirth. There may be a way out of that cycle. And if you're devoted to Krishna, an avatar of the god Vishnu, he will teach you how to get out of that cycle. So I think, let me look on here about yoga. It's coming here, karma, bhakti, jnana, but I'm going to tell you about it right now. Again, we're still talking about the Mahabharata, and in the middle of that Mahabharata is the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of the Lord. Now we're talking about what he's teaching Arjuna. All right, teachings about yoga. There are 3 kinds of yoga mentioned in this story, the Bhagavad Gita. Your job is to figure out which is the emphasis. Which one does Krishna think is the best? Okay, the first is Jnana Yoga. And if you want to know how to spell it, it's here on the handout. Jnana. Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is the discipline of knowledge. Jnana, knowledge, yoga, discipline. The discipline of knowledge, or the way of knowledge. So you can get liberation from the cycle of reincarnation by having the right kind of knowledge. And Krishna will teach you that knowledge. But there's also Karma Yoga, Karma. Karma, you've heard of karma? Karma is action, and yoga is discipline. So this is the discipline of action. And in this story of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's teaching Arjuna about detachment, the teaching of detachment. So you should not be attached to the results of your action. Yes, you are going to have to go to war with your family members. Don't be attached to your family members. Don't be attached to this world. Don't be attached to things in this world. This is going to be a teaching that gets developed within Hinduism and also carries over into Buddhism. Detachment. It's connected to Karma Yoga, the discipline of action. Karma Yoga is also something that Gandhi uses later to challenge the British, but that's way later. The third yoga that we're going to talk about is Bhakti Yoga. B-H-A-K-T-I. Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti is devotion. So this is the discipline of devotion. This is going to give rise to devotional religion, and it's largely popular religion in Hinduism later. Bhakti Yoga is devotion to the god Vishnu through his avatars. And the avatars are Krishna and some others that I'll show you later. So the gods come back into the story through this discipline of devotion. The gods can be aids towards your path of liberation from reincarnation. Again, we're getting the teaching about reincarnation and the disciplines that will help you reach enlightenment. Originally, yoga was for meditation. and meditation so that you're not distracted by your body and your bodily needs, so that you can sit and meditate for long periods of time. And this is particularly connected to jhana yoga, the discipline of knowledge later on. You want to empty the mind of all thought, empty the desires of this individual self in order to realize the nature of your true self, which is the one, Brahman. So we're getting a little bit of that coming in here. Okay, let's wrap up this part on the Mahabharata. The teachings, what I want you to remember about the Mahabharata, it's an epic story. It's a story about Arjuna learning about reincarnation and the path to liberation from reincarnation. In a nutshell. There's more, but that's in a nutshell. And those ideas are going to be central to Hinduism. All right, let's talk about the Ramayana. The Ramayana, I'm just going to tell you quickly, is another epic story. And the story is about virtues and dharma, doing your duty for man and woman in relationship to one another. So marriage. And it's about Rama, R-A-M-A, and Sita. Rama and Sita are married. Rama is a Aryan prince, a Kshatriya, and he's married to Sita, and Sita is stolen, kidnapped by a demon. And the demon holds her for a long time, years, and Rama is trying to find her and win her back. This is the epic story. The demon holds her, but he does not molest her in any way. She's pure. She's kept pure. The gods protect her. And Rama rescues her after many, many years, but he is suspicious about her faithfulness to him over the years. And so she must undergo a test to prove her purity. All right, these are not like popular stories to us now. We're like, what? That's so patriarchal, misogynistic. Well, it's a story about purity and devotion, and those are old school virtues and concepts. So she is going to prove her virtue by walking through the fire. If she makes it, then she's been pure. If she burns up, then she's lying and unfaithful. But remember, the fire is Agni, a god. And Agni protects her. She walks through the fire and is protected, and her faithfulness is proven, and I guess they live happily ever after. But these stories were meant to be examples of virtue. Virtue in the priestly caste, the princes who fight, and virtue in the priestly caste in the marriage relationship and faithfulness. So it's about virtue. And then the laws of Manu is not an epic, but it's laws. Rules for living, ethics, basically. This is where we get Brahmanical religion, the Brahmins, the highest caste. So remember we talked about the caste system. Maybe we should mention it again. It's coming up. The Brahmins are at the top. And this is the rules particularly coming out of the Brahmanical religion. I almost want to pause here because this could take a little time to go over. Or should we just go long? Let's just go long. Why not? Okay, let's talk about Brahmanical religion. This is becoming more ritual focused, and you can see here some interesting words. The Varna Ashrama Dharma system is about your caste, levels of society, stage of life, ashrama, and your duty. So I am going to ask you to take notes. The question I want you to know from this Laws of Manu section is explain the Varna Ashrama Dharma system. Okay, so Varna, I'm going to type. Let's see if I can get a Word document. Manu. The core question is explain the Varna, Ashrama, Dharma system. Varna is your caste. And we mentioned the caste when we went over that origin story about the Purusha being cut into pieces. So caste is, the highest caste are the Brahmins. They're at the top, they're the priests. The Kshatriyas are next, they are the rulers. So Arjuna and Rama are of this caste. The Vaishyas are the merchants, the Shudras are the servants, and the untouchables are the bottom. Now there's a lot of talk about who are the untouchables. They are not in a caste. And really, I'm going to draw something here to make another distinction that we should make. If you make a line between the Vaishyas and the Shudras, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas are all called the twice-born caste. They have a process of being born again, meaning they get, after the student stage of life, they get a cord that they put on and wear as a symbol that they have been taught the religious teaching about liberation and the path to enlightenment. The lower castes do not get that teaching, and this is why you might think, oh, that's oppressive. It's because of their caste and the way society is ordered. So there is a very detailed order to things. And remember, they get the religious teaching that is being taught in the Bhagavad Gita, and they get the path to liberation. The Shudras, if they do their duty and they are good at what they do, they will reincarnate into one of these twice-born castes. And the idea is that you go up each lifetime. The Brahmins are the ones that have the teaching, and they get liberated after this, I guess, if they're practicing the Varna, Ashrama, Dharma system. So what is the next thing we need to know about? So we have the castes, and then Ashrama is stage of life. So you're in a caste and you also are in a stage of life. And the stage of life is the student stage, and that's until you're about 25 years old. It's expected that you will be celibate during this stage and that you will be dedicated to learning the wisdom of the elders, the scriptures, and duties, particularly for males. Males go to Brahmin school or go to religious school. Females stay home and learn the duties of being a wife. The householder stage is next, where you get married, you pursue the 4 goals, which are, let me see the 4 goals. Artha, material gain, Dharma, doing your duty, and Kama, pleasure. So you can pursue wealth, power, fame, pleasure, and children. You have a duty to have children to keep society going. These are 3 of the 4 goals. Then there's the elder stage where you're, okay, so householder is probably between 25 years old and 50 years old. Elder is after 50, when the children are grown, you've raised your family. This is where you teach and you serve your community beyond your own family. You're giving back. You're doing service to your community. And then the last stage is called the renouncer stage. Not everyone can do this stage. It's difficult. This is where you withdraw from worldly life and you live as an ascetic. This is the 4th goal. It's called moksha. And this is a teaching that comes in as one of the ways to achieve enlightenment. So the renouncer stage is after 75 years old. 75 to whenever you die. This is where you walk away from everything. And there's a story of this ritual where the father and the son walk to the edge of town together and they say goodbye to each other. The son turns his back on the father turns his back on the son, the father walks into the forest, the son walks back to the town, and they never see each other again. This is that detachment teaching. They are detached from one another because the elder father is going to pursue this goal of release from the cycle of reincarnation. Now he's going to focus on his spiritual life. He's going to forget about this world, because guess what? This world isn't real. All of that you just did, not real. And that's going to be the shocker when we get to the philosophical level of Hinduism. So moksha is enlightenment. Okay, and that's the goal of the renouncer. And then the last piece of this system is duty. Dharma is your duty. Everyone has a duty according to the caste that they're in, the stage of life that they're in, and their gender. So the Varna Ashrama Dharma system is about your caste, here they are, the stages of life, here they are, and your duty according to those, okay? Now, that is the teaching that's coming from the laws of Manu. So you can see this. The 4 castes, their duties and relations, the stages of life, and the goals of the householder. So the 3 goals of the householder: pleasure, wealth, power. You can pursue that as much as you want in this life. But then the 4th goal is renouncing all of that, turning your back, becoming ascetic. Ascetic is denying pleasure, denying this world. Okay, now, next time we will get into devotional religion, and then we're going to talk about Hinduism as it has developed from all of this background, material background influences, and what are the challenges and responses. So I'm going to pause here. Thanks for your patience, and I'll see you in the next video.